Press hockey coverage with Jim Biringer.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, voice of Full Press Hockey. I'm joined by Evan Rawal of the Denver Gazette. Talk to hear about Colorado Avalanche today. There's some big news. Evan, first off, thank you for coming on the program today.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
The big news out of Denver, the Colorado Avalanche extend Martin Necas 8 years, $11.5 million AAV. And your initial thoughts on the contract?
It's about where I thought it was going to be trending in recent weeks. Obviously he got into the hot start here. Like, he's been incredible to start the year, but we're just seeing these contracts are costing more and more money. So, over the summer it was okay, maybe 9.5, keep it under 10. Now it's like, okay, well, I figured it was going to be around 11, and I think the Avs upped it to get it done and not have to deal with what they dealt with last year. I think that was a big thing for them, is like, we want to get this done. We don't want to have to deal with this throughout the season like we did with Mikko last year, and they were able to lock this down today.
Yeah, and Necas was a part of that Mikko Rantanen trade last year, the surprising trade. I don't think a lot of people saw that one coming. Mikko Rantanen, the first trade involving him, went to Carolina, but Jack Drury and Martin Necas were a part of that. And you mentioned it, 11-5, and you mentioned the Rantanen thing, but before we get to that, how has he really fit in to this team, especially with like Nathan MacKinnon being at the forefront of this offense?
Yeah, it's almost been an immediate fit. Like, I was in Boston when the trade went down, and the first game it was like, okay, you can tell these are two guys that have never played together. And actually Nate, he played so long with Mikko, he never really had played with another right-handed shot, so it was a completely different thing for him. But the next day, actually, in New York, they put up 4 points together each, and it was just like, okay, this might work. He fits the way they want to play perfectly. And Jared Bednar said today, we're not going to change our system for somebody else. And it's like, okay, well, that means he just came in and he was a perfect fit, because they want to play fast, and he's a fast guy. He's a really fast skater, and he thinks the game really well, and he's super skilled. So it's just been a perfect fit from day one. And the fit with Nate is, even though they were producing early on, they had to kind of work out the kinks of, they both kind of end up in the same spot. They both want to move around. They both carry the puck a ton. So that means somebody's got to, shoot the puck, and somebody's got to go to the net. So they've worked out the kinks, and it's been interesting to watch, because Nate's kind of taken him under his wing immediately. Like, before and after practice, they're working together, and they're communicating constantly. So it's been new for Necas, but I'm sure he's loving it, and he's learned to deal with Nate and how intense he can be. But that's just the way it is if you want to play on the Avalanche.
Oh, yeah, clearly. I've seen it firsthand with Nate, watching his press conferences, especially the year before they won the Cup. I remember what it stuck out. He's like, we haven't won, I'm not going to swear on here, but we haven't won stuff in the National Hockey League yet. And I could tell because Nate follows Sidney Crosby's mentality, those guys train. But I saw firsthand Sunday before when the Devils won the initial game, and then the Colorado Avalanche won, the rematch, the home and home. The way Necas and MacKinnon cycle the puck with Makar at the point, it was a perfect fit. And my opinion was this when the initial trade went down. I want to get your thoughts on this. I said, when Necas is coming over, we all heard the talk about Rantanen. I said, this deal will get done. It'll be easier for the Avs to get done, because Necas just wants to go to a place that he just wants to belong, because in Carolina, it was too contentious.
Yeah, and he didn't say it, but he kind of threw shade at them today, a little bit of, an 8-year deal. Like, they're showing trust in me, and that's something new. And I think it was very obvious that Carolina, like, whether it was Brindamore or management, they weren't always on the same page. And their system isn't really built for the way that Necas wants to play. They want to dump it in, they want to chase it, they throw it at the net, whereas he wants to hold on to the puck. He wants to make plays. And they're not necessarily wanting that in Carolina. So everything about this has been perfect for him. And, I think for him, like, he just wants a hug. Like, he wants to be loved, and the Avs have shown that they love him, and it's been a perfect fit. So why not keep this going?
Right, and it's a guy that bet on himself, right? Like, he's like, all right, take a 2-year bridge deal at $6.5 million. I'm gonna bet on myself here in Carolina, and then he gets traded. And he was already off to a hot start in Carolina before the trade, and it's just continued. And I think this is the keeps their. I know you tweeted. I saw a couple other people say it keeps their championship window open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm over talking about the Rantanen trade, but it's just the reality of everything is that this year was kind of the big reason why Mika was dealt, whether it was the right move or not. I mean, obviously things are still going to play out. Didn't look good last year because of how things ended in the playoffs, but you know, they wouldn't have been they wouldn't have the team they have right now if Rantanen had signed for 12 or something like that because they would have had to make sacrifices. They would have had to give up some depth players. And Necas has come here and he's been a great fit and he's going to make a little bit less, but he's still going to produce around the same if things keep up the way they've been going. So they're looking like they're in good shape. And now, and a big part of this is he's only 26, and he would have been the youngest free agent of the top guys to hit the market, and he didn't do that. So the Avs are a bit of an older team, so to have a slightly younger guy like this locked up is good for them.
Yeah, you touched on it, and I know you said you're tired of talking about the Rantanen thing. I just want to ask you one more question on Rantanen because some people, there's a lot of misconceptions out there because everybody's looking at the dollar amount. Oh well, Rantanen signed for $12 million in Dallas, and Necas signed for 11.5. The belief was he was asking for more money than Nathan MacKinnon. Is that correct, or is that a false narrative out there?
I think there's just conflicting reports out there. I think, to me, like especially having been like I remember being in Boston after the trade was made, and Nate saying, "Yeah, we just thought eventually it would get done, like Landy got done. Like Landy a few years back, he was hours away from becoming a free agent, and the Avs eventually were just like, okay, we'll get this done." I think eventually it would have gotten done. It's just the Avs were uncomfortable having that hang over their head. And he got what he got in Dallas. I think Carolina offered him a huge amount of money, and he just didn't want to play there, which I think has kind of been overlooked. That they would have paid him a lot of money. He just didn't want to be there. So I don't know if he was asking for more than MacKinnon. I think maybe his agent had something to do with that because he had the Draisaitl deal get done a few months earlier. But regardless, it's over, and this is how it is. But I think, in my opinion, if the Avs have held on to him, it would have eventually gotten done because I think both parties would have been like, "What are we doing? Like, this is a good fit. Let's get this done." But the Avs didn't want to go there, and here we are.
Right, and it seems that GM Chris MacFarland and Joe Sakic have been pretty steadfast on their belief on it, despite what happened in the playoffs. They're like, nope, we believe in our salary structure. We believe in, this is how we're building a team because we knew what was coming down the road. And you mentioned it before, being competitive, having depth pieces, knowing who's next.
Yeah, and who's next is Cale Makar.
Yes, exactly. What do you think? People have always asked me, hey, what do you think he's going to get? Is he going to reset the market? Defenseman, probably. Do we expect July 1st, bang, it's going to get done? Or does it take a little bit?
I think September 15th is going to be the big day because I think that's with the CBA. It's going to be the last day he can get the 8-year deal. I don't know if July 1st, the Avs haven't typically been a team that gets things done right away. However, it's clear that they're planning towards this, so I don't think it's going to be anything that lingers into the season. Personally, I think it's going to get done. What the AAV is up to, I think that's anyone's guess, because I think Cale took a bit of a discount last time because he wanted them to keep Landy around, which they eventually did, and he wanted to take that. And I still think he'll probably take like a discount, not a McDavid level discount like we just saw, but I don't think it's going to be, I've seen the number 20 million thrown out there. I'd be surprised if it's 20 million. I think it's going to be a lot lower than that. And I think he's still going to want to sign a deal where it's like, okay, I'm resetting the market, but we're still going to be able to compete here.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I've always thought maybe like 13, 14, somewhere around there. But again, like you said, who knows? Because they want to compete. They want to keep adding players. And, the Avs are looking pretty good. The power play's finally clicking the other night. But do you see positional needs as again, the season's still early and, we're not even 20 games and everybody says 20 games is a 20 games, but you could see some trends heading into, later on in the season. Do you think they'll add some depth pieces along the way as they try to compete for another Stanley Cup?
I definitely think they do. And MacFarland being able to get this done means he can now focus on that where he doesn't have to worry about this moving forward. So I think to me, the big thing is going to be third line center. Jack Drury's done a good job here to start the year, but I think in a perfect world, They always call him an elite fourth line center, which I don't know. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me because that still means a good third line center.
Yeah.
But I think they would love to move him down to that fourth line spot and find somebody to kind of play between him and Nelson if they could. And then beyond that, they're going to look for a defenseman. They've got a lot of right-handed shots, and one of them is always playing the left side right now. I think they're going to look for a left shot defenseman that could maybe play with Burns or Manson, one of those two. Jamie Alexiak's a guy that just makes sense to me. How much he'd cost, I don't know, but just a big left-handed shot that can eat some minutes for them and kill some penalties. I think that's something that they're going to look for because, to me, those are their two biggest needs, especially with Mackenzie Blackwood about to return from injury.
And speaking of Mackenzie Blackwood and speaking of what this team did, last year, horrible goaltending to begin the year, revamped their entire goaltending, revamped their entire team. And yeah, they lost in Game 7 of the first round. Again, the divisional format, we can all debate. But what does this say about a guy like Chris McFarland being so aggressive, saying, you know what, we got to just take care of this early because sometimes teams wait too late to fix problems.
Yeah, last year was wild. Last year was like the type of year as a beat writer where you're like, okay, well, this isn't just going to slow down. Like there was a trade every 10 minutes, it felt like. So, yeah, opening night, I remember in Vegas last year, both Georgiev and Annunen just getting lit up, and it's like, oh, we're already doing this. Okay, here we go. So, McFarland deserves credit for not sitting on his hands and just saying, okay, we're not going to do this. And I mean, he deserves credit for that. Obviously, he went into the year knowing those are his two goaltenders and he had to kind of fix it. So credit, and, he gets some of the blame for having to deal with that early in the year. But for fixing the goaltending, Scott Wedgwood, perfect backup. Everyone in the locker room loves him. Great guy. He played with Mackenzie Blackwood before, so there was a relationship prior. And they did their homework on Blackwood. I think they looked into him the previous year. And for McFarland to go out and change his goaltending in a span of 10 days, I think it was incredible because it was just a sign, obviously, of more things to come because he made about 6 more trades the rest of the year. But just that he's not going to sit on his hands and he's going to be aggressive. And I think he knows that this is a team that, McKinnon's 30, Makar's up for a big contract that could, as much as they're going to be able to compete moving forward, $16 million or whatever he's going to get it's going to impact their cap down the line. So he's got to go for it now while these guys are in their prime.
Yeah, and speaking of going for it, I loved, going back to their cup year because I always felt they were good and they were an elite team, but I'm like, man, it feels like a 3-man team when Rantanen was there. I'm like, it's Makar, it's MacKinnon, it's Rantanen, Landy's there, but they just don't have the depth. Talk about, I've always circled this guy when he was in Montreal, and I always felt Nichushkin was good in Dallas. But what does it mean to have a guy like Artturi Lehkonen and Valeri Nichushkin on this team to add the depth to help MacKinnon and that top line below?
Lehkonen is the he is the glue on that top line. Obviously MacKinnon and Necas get all the credit, but he does he doesn't do all the work. He does a lot of the work for those guys because they like to circle around and they want to stay on the outside and keep the puck moving in. So when there's a battle, he's got to go win it and get the puck back for Nate, and he's so good at it. And then when they want to put it on net, who's going to the net? It's Artturi Lehkonen. That's his office, and that's where most of his goals are scored. And he's just such an intelligent hockey player. He reads plays before they're about to be made. Like, he knows if he gets the puck in the neutral zone, he knows where Nate's going to be. He could hit it, lead him perfectly to get him going with speed. And he's just somebody that this coaching staff trusts immensely. It's funny, we're talking about Makar's up for next year. Lehkonen's last year of his contract is next summer, and I think I said it last week on Jared Bednar you'd have to pry Artturi Lehkonen from his cold dead hands because he just loves him as a coach, and any coach would love Artturi Lehkonen on their team. And Nichushkin's kind of the same. He's gotten off to a really good start. He's just a train, and when he gets going, nobody can slow him down. Like, I think there was a play the other night where Jalen Chetfield took about 6 penalties and still couldn't slow him down on a breakaway. So these are two guys that, yeah, the Avs have the superstars, but how far they're going to go in the playoffs really goes around these two guys. And Nichushkin was cold in the playoffs last year, so they need him to kind of get back to what he was doing prior to that year.
And it feels like with Nichushkin, if he's out of the lineup, it kind of just throws things off so much. He just feels like when he's in the lineup, the Avs are going really well, but if he's not in the lineup, it just is like, okay, is he he's that much of an important piece to this team?
Yeah, and that was the statistic for a long time, is that with him in the lineup, they were like 750 win percentage, and without him, I think they were around 500. So, um, and it was a large sample size because he has missed a lot of time. So it just shows how important of a player he is.
And you mentioned Lehkonen. I had actually didn't even know that he's due for an extension. What do you think that number comes in at by chance?
That's a trickier one because he'll be, I think, be 32 starting his next deal, and he's not a big guy. He's a smaller guy, and he's getting a little older, and you kind of have to worry about, okay, is the mileage going to eventually catch up to him? Because he does not play the same, he's 5'11", 180, and he plays like he's 6'3", 250. So, it you have to worry about injuries there because he's already been dealing with it. But I think that's a deal where you're like, he's making 4 or 5 now. Can we keep him around 6 if it's possible? Because he's just such a good fit with Nate, and Nate loves him on a lot. Like whenever you ask about that line, Nate's like, "Well, don't forget about Arturi. He does a lot to keep this thing going."
Yeah, and that was a great pickup for their Stanley Cup run. I mean, again, I know the big thing had always been, team needs a second line center. Kadri was there. Again, the cap situation with everything with Kadri, they had to move him out because of cap. He goes to Calgary. How does Brock Nelson fit in for the local guys around here? Because being in Jersey, he's a Long Islander. They made the trade for him. How does he fit in with this team?
I think it's still a work in progress. The one thing I will say, he's coming off probably his best 3-game run with the organization recently. He and Val Nichushkin are starting to show some real chemistry together. And if that can work, that's huge for them because those two can be a duo on that second line that can hold things down. But production just hasn't fully been there. To me, it still looks like he's getting used to playing in such an up-tempo system that the Avs play and what they demand of him on a nightly basis. I think they were asking a little too much from him at the start of the year. They were playing him like 22, 23 minutes in all situations. And now they've got him down to like 17, 18, 19, which I think is kind of the perfect spot that you need him in. And he's starting to shoot more. And that's a big thing because he's scored 30 goals multiple times in his career. They need him to start shooting. So I think they're going to need a bit more from him because it's still 3 points in 11 games. That's just not good enough moving forward. And they need him to kind of keep this momentum going throughout the year because some fans think the second line center position has been cursed here in Colorado since Kadri left, and it kind of feels that way because Middlestad looked great when he got here, and then it just disappeared pretty quickly. So they cannot win the cup with Brock Nelson is producing 3 points at every 11 games.
And they sure can't win the cup if the power play wasn't clicking before the game the other night. And I think it was due. The Devils' PK was due for not stopping like everybody. It felt like they were like at one point they were killed off 21 straight. But the other night, 4 for 6 in the power play with for the Colorado, and that's just the first unit is so electric, but their second unit is really good too.
Yeah, the first unit, there's just a lot of talent on there. It's just like sometimes they can get a little stale. And the thing I noticed the other night is, when you watch Edmonton's power play, Connor McDavid is never in one spot. He's always moving around. The other night, they finally were starting to move Nate around a little bit more. And Olofsson scored a goal where it's Nate on the other side, where he's not usually, and he just drops it back to Olofsson because everyone's going to watch Nate. So I think they need more of that. There's just so much skill that they shouldn't be so stagnant and not moving. And then, yeah, you mentioned it. Like, this is the first year in a couple of years since the Cup run that they now have a legitimate second unit with Gabe, and Brent Burns is there if they want to put him out there. Taves is still there. Lekkonen's on the second unit. Nelson's now on the second unit. So like they can throw out a legitimate second unit it's different from their top unit, but it's still very talented that, other teams have to pay attention to it. And, 4 goals in the first 10 games on the power play, and then 4 goals the other night. Like it's not going to work out that way throughout the whole year, but this should not be a bottom 10 power play like it has been to start the year. It needs to get going, and there's just too much talent for them to be playing that poorly.
Yeah, and you mentioned Gabriel Landeskog comes back last year after being out for a couple of years. What's it meant for this team, not only in the room, but on the ice to have a guy like that? And what have you seen from him this year so far?
On the ice, he's still kind of getting back up to speed. You can tell that the pace and like the grind of a full season is something he's got to get used to. And he said as much the other day that he's he's trying to temper his expectations because he hasn't done this for 3 years. So he came back. So he looked incredible in the playoffs. He hasn't quite hit that level to start this year, but just everything else he means to the team is huge. Opening night in LA, Josh Manson throws a big hit, has to get into a fight. The other guy, Jeff Malach, comes off the bench to fight him. It's just little things like Gabe jumps off the bench, goes to talk to the refs, that guy gets the extra 2, right? And sure enough, the Avs get the power play. And it's just little things that having your captain back that you didn't have the last 3 years. If these rookies score their first goal, Gabe's shooting them with water bottles because that's what he does every time they score a goal. In the locker room today, Net just signs his extension. You can hear Gabe yelling in the background, team dinner, he's paying for team dinner, just things like this. So just having him around the locker room and, he's still getting back up to speed, but you can tell the difference and how much more comfortable everybody else feels where it's like, Cale feels more comfortable talking to the media this year because not everything's on his shoulders. And Nate the same way. It's just, you can't even describe some of the differences he makes in the locker room, and hopefully he gets back up to speed here as things kind of progress and he gets more comfortable and used to playing at this pace again.
Do you think at some point during the year that they may, like everybody throws this word around because it's been a big deal because Jordan just talked about it the other night on the NBA on NBC, but do you think at a point maybe they'll try to limit his games like just because of the injury history with the knee?
I could see it, yeah, and they've kind of talked about that. He's been taking some practices off. For now, he feels good, but I could definitely see it as this grind continues at back-to-back. They have a back-to-back this weekend. That's a part of me that always wonders, well, give him a day off. We'll see how it goes. Because once Logan O'Connor comes back next weekend, they'll finally be healthy. And Gavin Brindley's been so good that it's like, okay, well, can we really send this guy down? So I could see it here and there where they're give him these maintenance days or whatever you want to call it. But also, NHL players aren't really built like that. So I don't know if it's going to be an easy thing to tell Gabe, hey, we're going to give you the night off. Whereas I think they're going to be more like, hey, take practice off. Don't worry about coming to practice today.
Or maybe limit his minutes in the game. Like just try to keep him in that, like keep him in the rhythm of the game. But hey, maybe we'll just like limit your minutes.
Yeah, and they've already kind of started doing that. Like he hasn't been playing a ton this year every night. He's not killing penalties. He used to kill penalties every night. So he's been around like that 14, 15 minute mark all year. So I think that's something he's been dropped down to the third line now just to kind of spread things out. And that's another thing they're going to do is they're not going to overload him. That's for sure.
That makes sense. Real quick, one more before we get you out of here because we appreciate you here on the podcast. How surprised are you at the way the season has started, not only for the Avalanche, but in that Central Division that everybody thought was going to be, okay, it's going to be Dallas, Colorado, Winnipeg, top 3, but here we are, Utah Mammoth, sitting at the top of the Central Division at the beginning of the year.
I'm not terrible. I picked them to make the playoffs. I'm surprised they're doing as well as they are. But I'm not surprised that they're good because even when they were the Coyotes, they always just seem to give the Avs trouble. Like just the way that they play, they're a pesky little team. And now Logan Cooley's popping off. Like they have some elite skill there that they maybe didn't have in the past. So it's exciting to me because I'm sick of seeing the same teams in the playoffs every year. Like I personally do not want to go to Dallas again this year. It feels inevitable that they're going to have to go to Dallas, but I would like to see some new blood in there. Go to Utah and Denver and Salt Lake City are close. I think the NHL would love some sort of rivalry to kind of build there in the division. So I'm not surprised by them. I'm not surprised that St. Louis is off to a tough start. I think they were overkicking their coverage there towards the end of the season just because they had a new coach and they had the new coach boost. But to me, that's a pretty average roster. And kind of the same with the Wild, too. Winnipeg kicking around is a little bit surprising because they're missing some key players. So I think that's just a sign of a good structured team. So I'm excited to see Utah stick around here and hopefully they make the playoffs and bring some new blood into the NHL playoffs.
Hey, Evan, I have the Utah Mammoth making the playoffs too. I would love to see a Colorado-Utah first-round playoff because let me tell you something. It did wonders in Florida when Tampa and Florida's met in the playoffs all these years. That's what the NHL wants with these rivalries, so I could definitely see it.
Yeah, I would love it because it's such close proximity for us, but also just, that's how you build a rivalry. And we're sick of the Dallas rivalry a little bit here, and mostly because it's been, a little bit one-sided in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the Avalanche.
Yeah, they haven't won one in a while. Going on since I believe they got one after '99. I would think. I'm not looking at. I haven't looked at it off the top of my head, but I do remember they beat the Avalanche in '99.
It's been a while. It's been a while.
But Evan, thank you so much for coming on Full Press NHL Podcast today on such short notice to discuss the Martin Necas new contract extension, everything going on with the Avalanche. Where can people find you?
I work for the Denver Gazette, so you can find me on X and Blue Sky, Evan Rawal, Rawal, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, definitely we'll get you back on again throughout the season. Again, Jim Biringer here at the Full Press NHL Podcast. Evan Rawal of the Denver Gazette. Guys, enjoy the rest of the regular season, and we'll be back again real soon.
Full Press Hockey Coverage with Jim Biringer.